Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time, we're looking into the best times to give charity in Islam.
Okay.
When are the times for giving charity with the greatest rewards?
Yeah.
And honestly, some of the insights in here are pretty surprising.
Yeah.
For example, it turns out that giving when you're afraid of becoming poor is considered especially virtuous.
It is a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
It really is.
Is
This
it?
idea of giving when you are afraid, it
Yeah.
speaks to the core of Islamic charity, where it's not just the amount that you give, but the spirit and intention behind it.
So let's dive into some of the specific times, because the article highlights 4 in particular.
Okay.
The first one that really caught my attention was giving when you're healthy but fear poverty. And there's a hadith from Bukhari that directly addresses this.
Right. The Prophet Muhammad was asked which form of charity brings the greatest reward.
Okay.
And his response, as recorded in the hadith, is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It essentially encourages giving while you're healthy and prosperous, even if you fear becoming poor, rather than waiting until you're on your deathbed.
It's almost like a test of faith giving when you feel like you have less to give.
It is a test of faith,
Yeah.
a testament to your trust in God's provision, demonstrating a belief that generosity, even in potential scarcity, will be rewarded.
So let's move on to the next one that the article highlights, and that's giving at dawn.
Okay.
There's this beautiful image associated with giving at this time.
There is. The hadith describes angels descending at dawn, specifically praying for those who give charitably at that hour,
Wow.
and contrasts this with a prayer for those who withhold their wealth.
Oh.
It's really beautiful imagery that they use
Yeah.
to depict the spiritual significance of giving at dawn.
And just to be clear for our listener, are we talking about a specific time frame here?
Yes. The article specifies after Fajr prayer until sunrise, which is usually about an hour.
Okay, so that early morning period.
Yes.
Okay, next up we have Friday, which, as many people know, is a holy day for Muslims.
It is.
And good deeds are generally considered more rewarding on Friday.
Yes.
And Imam Asyafi, a prominent Islamic scholar, is even quoted in the article as stating that charity given on Friday is multiplied in its reward.
Yes, he is.
So it's like your generosity gets a cosmic boost on Friday.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, and finally we have Ramadan.
Yes.
This one makes a lot of sense, given that Ramadan is already a month of increased spiritual focus and good deeds.
Absolutely. The article quotes a hadith from at-Tirmidhi specifically stating that charity during Ramadan is considered the most valuable.
Okay.
And Ramadan, as you mentioned, is already a time of heightened spiritual awareness and self-reflection.
So it's interesting to me how each of these times connect back to a deeper spiritual practice or principle within Islam. It's not just about giving. It's about aligning your generosity with these moments.
And that's a crucial point. The article underscores the importance of these specific times.
Okay.
But it also goes on to emphasize that even though these times are ideal for giving, we shouldn't delay charitable acts simply to wait for them.
Right, because none of us can guarantee that we'll be around tomorrow, let alone until Ramadan.
Exactly. The key takeaway is to be prompt with your giving. If you have the means to help someone in need, don't delay. But if you're looking for those times when your generosity might have an even greater impact, those 4 moments hold particular weight within the Islamic tradition.
And just to be clear, the article isn't saying that charity given outside of these times isn't valuable.
No, not at all.
Okay.
The emphasis is on the fact that these 4 times are considered especially auspicious
Right.
for giving based on the hadiths and the teachings, but any act of sincere charity is encouraged and valued in Islam.
Before we move on, I'd love to kind of pick one of these and explore it in a little bit more detail. That first one, giving when you're healthy, but fear poverty,
Right.
really stood out to me.
Yes.
Can we unpack that concept a little further?
I'd be glad to.
Okay.
It's a truly fascinating idea, and it speaks to the deeper nuances of charitable giving in Islam.
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So, giving while healthy, but fearing poverty.
Yeah.
What's compelling about this concept is the inherent tension it reveals.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have the security of good health and the fear of losing it. And then on the other, you have this act of generosity, which might seem counterintuitive.
It does. It kind of goes against our natural inclination to hold on tighter to what we have when we feel a sense of scarcity coming on.
Exactly. And that's where that deeper spiritual principle comes in.
Yeah.
This act of giving becomes a tangible demonstration of faith.
Okay.
A belief that even when facing potential hardship, generosity will ultimately be rewarded.
It's like saying, I trust in God's provision enough to share, even when I'm worried about my own future.
That's a beautiful way to frame it. It highlights that underlying message of trust and reliance on a higher power that's so central to Islamic teachings.
And it also makes me think about the hadith itself. The language used is so powerful and evocative.
Absolutely. The Hadith doesn't just state a rule, it paints a picture.
Mm-hmm.
It urges the believer to give while they still have the capacity to choose to do so rather than waiting until their options are limited.
Oh, okay.
It highlights the idea that true generosity comes from a place of free will.
So giving when you're healthy but fear poverty, it's not just about the act itself, it's about the mindset behind it.
Precisely, it's about cultivating a spirit of generosity that transcends our immediate circumstances.
Okay.
It's a reminder that our connection to God and our commitment to charity shouldn't waver even in the face of potential hardship.
Now I'm curious how this concept of giving in a time of potential scarcity relates to the other three times that are highlighted in the article.
Yeah.
We've got Dawn Friday and Ramadan.
Mhm.
Do you see any connections or common threads running through them?
That's an insightful question. I think there's a definite through line.
Okay.
Each of these times represents a moment of heightened spiritual awareness, a time when Muslims are already engaged in practices that emphasize their connection to God.
So giving during those times kind of amplifies the spiritual significance.
You could put it that way. Giving at dawn, for example, coincides with the Fajr prayer,
Yeah.
a time when Muslims are already seeking closeness to God through prayer and reflection.
And Friday being the holy day naturally carries that heightened sense of spiritual importance.
Right. And Ramadan, with its focus on fasting, prayer, and charitable acts, is already a period of intense spiritual devotion.
So each of these times creates a sort of spiritual synergy.
Right.
You're already in a mindset of spiritual reflection and connection, and then the act of giving becomes an extension of that.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with the rhythms of your faith. It's about recognizing that generosity isn't just a standalone act, but something that's deeply interwoven with a broader spiritual practice.
That brings us to another concept mentioned in the article that I found really intriguing. Sadaqah jariyah.
Yes.
It roughly translates to continuous charity.
That's right. Sadaqah jariyah refers to those acts of giving that have a lasting impact, continuing to benefit others even after the giver has passed away.
It's like creating a legacy of generosity that extends beyond your own lifetime.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and it's a concept that holds particular significance within the Islamic tradition.
Could you elaborate on that a bit more?
Of course, in Islam, the idea that our deeds continue to have an impact even after death is very prominent.
Okay.
Sadaqah jariyah embodies this belief, emphasizing that certain acts of giving can create a ripple effect of goodness that spans generations.
What kind of acts would fall under that category?
The article provides some great examples: building a mosque, establishing a well for clean water, planting trees that provide shade and fruit, funding educational institutions, even sharing knowledge that benefits others. These are all considered forms of Sadaqah jariyah.
So it's about investing in these initiatives that have long-term benefits for the community.
Precisely, it's about creating something that continues to give back long after you're gone. And it's a concept that ties back beautifully to the 4 specific times for giving we've been discussing.
I can see where you're going with this.
Imagine, for instance, giving charity during Ramadan with the intention of establishing a well that provides clean water for a community.
Okay.
That act of generosity wouldn't just benefit people in that moment, but for generations to come.
So it becomes a form of sadaqah jariyah,
Yes.
this continuous act of charity that multiplies its impact over time.
Exactly. And this principle can apply to giving at any of the 4 auspicious times: giving at dawn to support an educational institution, contributing to a mosque construction fund on a Friday, or donating to a charitable cause that provides ongoing aid during Ramadan. These all have the potential to become acts of Sadaqah jariyah.
It adds another layer of depth to the concept of timing in charitable giving. It's not just about choosing the right moment to give. It's about considering the enduring impact of that generosity.
And that's where Sadaqah jariyah shines. It encourages us to think beyond the immediate and consider how our acts of giving can create a ripple effect of goodness that extends far beyond our own lifetimes.
It's a powerful reminder that our actions have lasting consequences and that we can continue to make a positive difference in the world even after we're gone.
That's beautifully put, and it speaks to a fundamental belief in Islam that our deeds in this life have implications for our afterlife.
So as we explore these best times to give charity in Islam, let's not forget about that potential for our generosity to become a form of sadaqah jariyah.
Let's embrace the idea that our acts of giving can create a legacy of goodness that benefits others for generations to come.
Now, shifting gears slightly, I'm curious about the role of intention in Islamic charity.
Okay.
We've talked about the importance of aligning our giving with specific times and this concept of Sadaqah jariyah.
Right.
But what about the inner motivation behind our giving?
That's a crucial aspect of Islamic charity.
Yeah.
The intention or niyyah is paramount. In fact, it's the very foundation of any act of worship in Islam, including giving.
So it's not just about the outward act of giving, it's about the inward state of the heart.
Exactly. The hadith emphasizes that actions are judged by their intentions. So if your intention behind giving charity is pure, seeking only the pleasure of God and the well-being of others, then that act holds immense value, regardless of the amount given.
That makes a lot of sense. It aligns with the emphasis on sincerity that's so central to Islamic teachings.
Precisely. And it's a reminder that true generosity flows from a heart that's motivated by compassion, empathy, and a genuine desire to make a positive difference in the world.
It's not about seeking recognition or praise, but about fulfilling a spiritual obligation and contributing to the well-being of others.
Exactly. And this principle of intentionality applies to all forms of giving in Islam, whether it's the obligatory zakat or the voluntary sadaqah.
It reminds me of the saying, it's not about how much you give, but about how much love you put into giving.
I love that. It beautifully captures the essence of intention in Islamic charity. It's about approaching giving as an act of love, compassion, and service to God and humanity.
And it's a reminder that even small acts of kindness, when offered with a pure heart, can have a profound impact.
Absolutely. A kind word, a helping hand, a simple gesture of support. These can be just as meaningful as grand acts of philanthropy as long as they're rooted in a genuine intention to make a positive difference.
It's about recognizing that generosity is not just about the scale of our giving, but about the spirit with which we give.
And that spirit, that intentionality, is what truly elevates our acts of giving and makes them a source of blessing, both for ourselves and for those we help.
Now, I want to loop back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
This idea that our deeds continue to have an impact even after death.
Yes.
You mentioned that this is a prominent belief in Islam. I'm curious to learn more about how this concept is reflected in Islamic teachings.
That's a great question. The belief in the continuation of our deeds' impact after death is deeply embedded in Islamic theology. It stems from the core belief in the Day of Judgment, where our actions in this life will be weighed and will be held accountable for them.
So it's not just about receiving rewards or punishments in the afterlife.
Right.
It's about the ongoing ripple effect of our actions.
Exactly. Our deeds, both good and bad, have consequences that extend beyond our earthly existence.
Okay.
And this belief incentivizes Muslims to live a life of virtue and righteousness, knowing that their actions have eternal significance.
It adds a whole new dimension to the concept of legacy. It's not just about the material possessions or accomplishments we leave behind, but about the enduring impact of our deeds.
Precisely. And this ties back beautifully to the concept of Sadaqah jariyah, which we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
By engaging in acts of continuous charity, we're essentially investing in our afterlife, ensuring that our good deeds continue to benefit others and generate blessings for us, even after we're gone.
So it's like planting seeds of goodness that continue to grow and bear fruit long after we're gone.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that our lives have a purpose that extends beyond our immediate gratification.
It encourages us to live with a sense of purpose and intentionality, knowing that our actions have both earthly and eternal consequences.
Exactly. And it's this belief in the lasting impact of our deeds that motivates Muslims to strive for excellence in all aspects of life, including their charitable giving.
It's about recognizing that our actions are not isolated events, but part of a larger tapestry of interconnectedness, and that our legacy is not just defined by what we achieve in this life, but by the enduring impact of our deeds on the lives of others, both present and future. Now, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the broader implications of this concept for those outside the Islamic faith. Do you think there are universal lessons that we can glean from these teachings?
Absolutely. While the concept of Sadaqah jariyah and the specific times for giving highlighted in the article are rooted in Islamic tradition, the underlying principles of intentionality, compassion, and the desire to make a lasting positive impact resonate with people of all faiths and backgrounds.
So even if someone isn't Muslim, they can still find inspiration and guidance in these teachings.
Absolutely. The core message transcends religious boundaries.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences that extend beyond ourselves, and that we have a responsibility to use our lives to make a positive difference in the world.
It's about cultivating a mindset of generosity,
Mm-hmm.
compassion and service to others, regardless of our beliefs or backgrounds.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that even small acts of kindness, when offered with a pure heart and a genuine desire to make a positive impact, can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond our immediate circle.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and
Mhm.
that our actions have the power to create a more just, compassionate, and loving world for all.
That's beautifully said. And it leads us to a fascinating question that I think is worth pondering.
Yeah.
What are the ideal moments for generosity in other belief systems, or even secularly?
That's a great question to consider as we move into the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating question.
So we've been diving deep into these specific times for giving charity in Islam, but what about other traditions or even secular perspectives?
Yep.
What are the ideal moments for generosity in those contexts?
It's a question that invites us to broaden our lens and explore the diverse ways in which generosity manifests across cultures and belief systems.
Right.
Okay, well, let's start by acknowledging that this concept of auspicious timing isn't unique to Islam.
Right.
Many
Yeah.
traditions have specific days, seasons, or events that are considered particularly favorable for charitable acts.
Okay.
For instance, in Christianity, the season of Lent leading up to Easter is often seen as a time for reflection, self-sacrifice, and increased charitable giving.
Okay, so it's like aligning your generosity with that spiritual rhythm of the year.
Exactly. And in Judaism, the high holidays, particularly Yom Kippur, are also times when charitable giving is emphasized as well.
Yeah, so it's about recognizing those moments in the calendar that hold particular spiritual weight and leveraging them for acts of generosity.
Now, even outside of formal religious contexts, there are often societal norms or cultural practices that influence the timing of charitable acts.
Oh, interesting. Can you give us an example?
Absolutely. Think about the holiday season in many Western cultures.
Okay.
It's a time when people are generally more inclined towards giving, whether it's through gift giving, donating to charities, or volunteering their time.
It's like there's a collective shift in consciousness towards generosity during that time of year.
Right, and this can be influenced by a variety of factors, from religious traditions to cultural norms to marketing campaigns that promote charitable giving during the holidays.
So it's a complex interplay of influences that shape our understanding of when it's most appropriate or impactful to give.
Now, beyond these calendar-specific moments, there's also the idea of kairos, which we touched upon earlier.
Right, that's that ancient Greek concept of the opportune moment.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those moments when your actions have the greatest potential for impact.
So it's less about adhering to a fixed schedule and more about being attuned to the needs of the moment.
Precisely, it's about cultivating a mindset of responsiveness and being ready to act generously whenever the opportunity arises.
That could be anything from offering a helping hand to someone struggling with groceries to donating to a disaster relief fund in the wake of a natural disaster.
And it's not just about grand gestures or large sums of money.
Right.
Sometimes the most meaningful acts of generosity are those small, everyday acts of kindness that brighten someone's day.
A kind word to a stranger, a listening ear to a friend in need, a simple act of service. These can all be powerful expressions of generosity.
And they often have a ripple effect, inspiring others to pay it forward and creating a more compassionate and interconnected world.
I love that.
So while specific traditions may have their own ideal moments for giving, the essence of generosity transcends these boundaries.
It's about cultivating a heart that's always open to giving, regardless of the time or circumstance.
And recognizing that every moment holds the potential for kindness, and that each of us has the power to make a difference no matter how small.
That's a beautiful takeaway from our deep dive today.
Really?
We started by exploring the specific times for giving charity in Islam, but we've ultimately arrived at a broader understanding of generosity as a universal human impulse.
Yeah, it's about recognizing our interconnectedness and recognizing that our actions have the power to create a more compassionate and just world for all.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with a final thought.
Please do.
Today we've explored these ideal moments for giving,
Right.
but perhaps the most important takeaway is that generosity isn't confined to specific times or occasions.
I couldn't agree more.
It's a way of being, a mindset that we can cultivate and express in every moment of our lives.
It's about making generosity a habit, a natural extension of who we are.
So as you go about your day-to-day, look for those opportunities to extend kindness, compassion, and generosity to those around you.
And remember, even the smallest acts of giving can have a profound impact, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of generosity. Until next time.